Hello everyone, this is the Postmortem for Chicken Scramble. Chicken Scramble is a game that puts the player in the position of a runaway chicken fresh out of the coop, trying to escape the farm. In an attempt to catch the chicken, the farm owner acts as a maze keeper, looking for and pursuing the chicken to prevent it from escaping. The player must utilize power-ups in order to evade the maze keeper and open doors with keys to get to the end. I am the producer/UI artist Anna Chen. The programmer/game designer is Grant Stewart. The artist/level designer is Anthony Johnston. The programmer is Nathan Davis. Our modeler, Alex Chandler, and our texture artist is Alexander Rick. So for our sprint statistics, we had 47.4 points per sprint. That's very close to our target ideal velocity of 48 points per sprint. As you can see from the graph, our lines don't quite match up with the end of sprint 7, but that's mainly because there was a big feature that we really wanted that ended up being a wish, so we had to cut it out. And so, for our user stories, we assigned 396 user stories. From there, points were assigned 421, nothing remaining to verify. Points moved to complete 328. User stories moved to complete 310, and then points assigned but not moved is 93. So for me as the producer, what went right? I felt that we as a team were able to create a game that felt like a finished product. So ideally, at this point, we could technically make some more levels, but at the time of development, we have everything that's like basically finished, like what we really need to polish, so I think that's all good. And for our team, we had a constant high velocity, and then the majority of our cards were moved to complete, so that's very good. And when we had bugs, they were pretty easy to spot and then pretty easy to fix. There weren't really any like giant bugs that caused us to like scramble around for like a whole sprint, so that was great. And also, I think no weird UI issues, so that's excellent. So what went wrong? In the beginning of our development cycle, we had a very long deliberation process because we just had a bunch of disagreements on what our idea of the game really was. So that just kind of made everybody really confused, and that wasn't great for our team, but luckily we were able to pull through from that. And we ended up needing to cut a level when we were working on it because it just took too long to work out its design in Unity, like just pieces weren't lining up, and then by the time we actually figured it out, it was just way too late, and we had to spend that time polishing the levels we actually did have in Unity, so that was very not great. And then finally, kind of a smaller issue, but I'd say we ran out of time for optimization because in our game we had some very, very unplayable lag. I mean, it was fixed, but it was more like temporary fix that could have been fixed with like actually optimizing our code, but unfortunately we weren't able to optimize like most of our code to the best of our abilities. So yeah. So what did I learn? I learned that people were much more motivated to do their work when they were one-pointer cards because people feel like they're very easy work tasks and you can get like a bunch of them done in a very giant work session, and then that contributes to a higher velocity, and then more people feel motivated to work because they see their teammates doing a lot of work, so that's excellent. And then that contributes to our other goal of having a build ready at the end of the sprint because it drives our teammates to make something that's playable, and then we can show it to our playtesters so they can come back to us with feedback, and then we can show it to the higher up so then they can see the progress we're doing, playable progress. That's very important. And then the last thing I learned is that we really need to scale down game ideas as much as possible so we have room for optimization, because I felt that even in our last sprint, we were kind of rushing a little bit to like make sure things worked right, and there were a few bugs left in the end of the game, but like it's still playable, which is a good thing.
Hello, my name is Alex Chandler, and my primary contribution to Chicken Scramble were the models. So what went right? So like I mentioned before, the majority of my work was regarding the modeling. I created all the models in the game. They all had valid geometry, clean UVs, all of that stuff. Only 2 of them had to be redone, so I was very happy with the work I was able to produce. Besides the models, I also did all the particles. We had a ton of great feedback regarding the particles. People really enjoyed them. I really enjoyed making them, so I was really happy with how those turned out. Another thing I did was the modeling and texturing for the Maze Keeper, which is something I am pretty experienced in, so I had a lot of fun doing it. But rigging and animating is not something I've ever done before. Luckily, some group members had some online tools that helped educate me on how to do it properly, and after I learned how to use the tools, I was able to rig and animate the Maze Keeper. So yes, idle animations, moving, attack, all that stuff. Super happy with how it turned out. Lastly, communication. We had a lot of communicating in our group. We were constantly in Discord and using a lot of other messaging systems that made it very clear what we needed to do, and we were able to talk to all the other group members very clearly if something did occur. So what went wrong? Luckily, a lot less stuff than what went right. But the two models I mentioned before that had to be redone had basic geometrical issues that we didn't catch until they were in the texturing stage. Another issue was regarding one of the modular wall components. It was a hexagonal wall, but it wouldn't line up with other walls, regardless of what type of measurements we used. Eventually scrapped it, but it took a lot of time that we could spend on other things. A naming convention is also something that I could have worked on a bit better. It is very clear to me, but I need to remember I'm working with other people, so it has to be clear to them as well. So it had some issues where somebody imported the wrong version of the Maze Keeper because I did not clearly label which version was supposed to be imported. So that was my fault, and it never happened again, so improved upon that. And then one of the modular walls had its scaling off. It was about 2.5 times bigger than it should have been. I don't know what the cause of that was, but it was an incredibly easy fix and didn't block us at all. Lastly, what did I learn? So something that became evident in this project and all the previous projects I've worked on is communication is vital. We had pretty good communication. We were constantly talking to each other. That being said, a lot of the cards we had were very simple and gave us a lot of creative freedom, which was great. But on the downside, because of this, the finished product didn't always match the vision that the producer or the designer had. Luckily, most of the work we did was relatively low poly, so it was very easy to redo when requested. Another thing I learned that I mentioned earlier was regarding the animation and rigging. It's not something I ever did before. I was very happy with how it turned out, being that I've never done it before, and it's a skill set I plan to use in the future. Lastly, I learned how to do sprite work. I do a lot of texturing on 3D objects, but 2D digital art is not really something I mess around with a lot. It's the first time I opened up Photoshop in like 4 years, but I was able to create some button sprites and a few other assets that made it into the final version of the game. So I was pretty happy with that. And that wraps up the majority of my contributions to Chicken Scramble. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Anthony Johnston, and I'm the level designer and 2D artist. So, what went right? Well, for one, the first thing I think went right was that I was really able to challenge myself in a real working environment for the first time in a way that did not just feel like I was working on another school project. I actually felt like I was working on an actual game and I think this was the first time that I actually felt like I was in that environment. The second thing that went right, I think that I really enjoyed being a 2D artist a lot more than anything else. And I think that because of that, I was able to get my products out a lot faster, and I was able to take a lot more pride in my work than I normally did. I even posted my work to my social media for the first time, and I'm not the type of person to do that. So I feel like this really boosted my confidence, and the level of enjoyment that I had allowed that confidence to come out and improve my quality of work. Oh, on top of that, I always had support from my other team members. Whenever I'd get stuck, I'd always have my team to back me up in ways that always made me feel like there was a cushion in case I ever messed up, which admittedly was a lot more than I would like. And on top of that, they also really appreciated my work. I really felt like my work was appreciated, and whenever I do something really good, I'd get a resounding good job from my game lead, and I feel like that also contributed to improving my quality of work and my passion to keep pushing forwards. So, as for what went wrong, there was a lot of times where I was unsure exactly what my game lead wanted. I had like a kind of an idea, and he gave me like a image that I could go off of, but I did not understand the full idea of what he wanted, and because of that, I ended up having to redo a lot of works. Like for the title sign on the poster, I had to make like 5 different iterations of the, no, not 5, about 3 different iterations of the title. And because I just did not understand completely what they wanted, and I did not, with only one reference image to go off of, I didn't want to just copy that reference image in terms of style and layout exactly, because then I would feel like that would be plagiarism, and I didn't want to do that. As an artist, morally, I did not want to do, I did not have the gall to go through that. And on top of that, I did not think about a lot of outside factors while accepting work, because game design was not my only class. I had to think about my other art classes, which also gave me a good amount of work to do outside of class. And because of that, I would take a lot of cards thinking that, oh, this shouldn't take me that long. It would take me about like 2 days to complete, and I could be on my merry way. I could maybe even ask for more cards, and then only to realize as I was working on the sprint that no, you have to actually go get groceries. You have to go do work for your other art classes. That also took up a lot of time, and I think because of that, I took on a lot more than I could chew, and which left me with cards to spare a lot of the time. And on top of that, when it comes to actually doing the art, I did not completely understand the style that my game lead wanted. By that I mean, I knew he wanted a cartoon style, but I did not want it. I didn't know if he wanted the shading to be like you see in the final product here, or if he wanted it to be more realist, more polygonal in a way. So because of that, that was also the other reason why I had to keep redoing work, even if my cards have been done before, and I already turned it in for them. And the final thing the final major problem that I had was I was way too afraid of GitHub. I felt like I was working with an egg, and I felt like that if that egg ever cracked, it would ruin the project for everyone. In reality, I did not need to be that afraid. I could have merged my branches a lot more. I could have sent in more work that was finished, and then instead of like sending it all in at the end when I was done with everything, or at the end of the sprint. And because of that, I feel like productivity as a whole for my team suffered, and I feel like that was no one's fault but mine. And actually, on top of that, I also forgot how to do a lot of things with GitHub because I was still learning how to do GitHub with this project. And I had to ask my producer a lot, like, how do I merge branches, or how do you want me to do this? I was always afraid that I would mess it up, even if I did remember. So, as for what I learned, I think I need to learn to ask a lot more questions. I think I've grown as an artist to have to be able in that type of way, because I've never actually did art for other people before. I've only done art for myself until this point. And with that, I now know that I need to ask questions like, what type of style do you want? How big do you want the piece? Is there some type of format you want me to have in terms of composition, or do you want me... Yeah, stuff like that, basically. I also need to learn to talk with my designer more often. I feel like I did not communicate well enough with him. I always showed, when I was done with work, I would always show my producer, because my producer was the one in charge of the cards, and my producer would be the one to move the cards from verify to complete. But I did not show my work with my game lead enough, and because of that, that's also part of the reason why I think the cards were sent back so often. But the last thing I think I learned was that I learned to adapt to other people's work formats in terms of like how they specifically work with GitHub, or how they specifically organize their scenes in Unity, I learned to adapt to their styles, and I attempted, and I think at the end of it all, I think I really did well in terms of adapting to my teammates around me and the work that they're also turning in. But I still, obviously, I still think that needs improvement. So that's basically what I did. Thank you so much.
Hello, everybody. My name is Nathan Davis. I'm the programmer of Chicken Scramble, or one of them, I should say. Grant did a good job too. All right, so I'm just going to go over the good, the bad, and the ugly. I'm going to keep it brief, super short. So for the good, the farmer AI, the nav mesh, and the save system, I think I did a really really good job on the farmer AI. It was really fun to make. It was really unique to kind of use new lines of code as well as using the nav mesh to kind of set up that AI system. The save system was really fun. It was really cool to like kind of dive back into some of my notes from 380 and actually apply those to the game. And having interfaces and the whole save system was a really cool time to do. It did take a lot of chunk of time and unfortunately wasn't able to completely finish it or optimize it, but it was a fun feature. And that's kind of why it's in the bad, which really streamlines me kind of into the bad section of what happened to this semester for my postmortem here. Points per card. I didn't really vouch for how many points each card should be. There was often times when I was accepting a 1 point card when it should have been a 3 point or an epic user story for the most part. Kind of like the save system. The save system had a lot of little implementations that took a lot longer than 1 points. Going forward, that was just kind of my fault. I should have vouched a little bit more, as well as tasks with no points. The task with no points really kind of drove me down because there would be one card that had a lot of, or not one card that had a lot of points, but it was one card that had a lot of, not listed points. So it was only 1 point, but there was a lot of little tasks that needed to be built up in order to do that card. So, I was often finding myself creating UI elements and doing some designing when I was the programmer, which I didn't really want to do. But it is what it is, and I just wanted to stick with the game and make sure that I was proud of the work that I produced. Then kind of lastly, the ugly here, and it's not so ugly, it's more of the woulds and wouldn't do agains. I would have liked to have more complex AI system. So I was able to complete the AI software or system within the first 4 sprints, but it would have been really fun to kind of implement it and mess around with just more coding for it, giving it a turnaround ability or a chase ability that would, affect the overall gaming experience a little bit more. And then lastly, the things that I would really need to kind of improve on would be my time management skills. I bit off a little bit more than I could chew this semester, which definitely I felt as this semester winded down. It was really stressful to kind of make sure I was able to get everything done. And again, that's on me, and it's only the real world having a lot of these tasks that you're dealt with or deal. Sorry, lack of words there, but you kind of understand the image. And then just off to the right hand side where my face is, there's just a lot of some of my sample coding for the farmer AI and some of the save systems, as well as the stars and stuff that I was talking about a minute ago. This is kind of what has helped me get through the semesters, is all this coding and stuff. So thank you for your time. This was a really fun experience to have throughout the class. I think Anna and Grant did an amazing job of leading and designing this game. I'm looking forward to working with everyone in the future. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Grant Stewart, and I am the lead designer and programmer for Chicken Scramble. What I think went right in this game is, well, I did an animation kind of for the first time in Unity, and I think it went really well because, people can kind of clearly see that, there's a big intimidating maze keeper coming for you. And another thing that I think we did really well is the implementation of ability usage. Now, as you see on the left-hand side, there's several abilities that the player can use that all work very well and, communicate like how you're supposed to be using it. Another thing that surprised me a lot is that the ability to climb the ladder works pretty well in the game. I mean, we only have one ladder, which is in the second level, but once the player is on top, they can get right back down after looking throughout the map, as you can see on this image. Now, some things that I think went wrong in this design process is that our tutorial level wasn't like effective enough. A lot of players that were playing our game saw that, the game is really confusing and they didn't really know, why they're supposed to be using their abilities, why they're trying to get to the end of the maze, or how to work the game in general, which, is mainly a mistake that I made because I didn't want the player to clearly see a list of words telling them, how to play the game. I just kind of wanted them to figure it out themselves while guiding them, which didn't really work out so well. Another thing that I think went wrong is that we had a huge lack of communication within the design process. And if you are ever in any project at all, you know how big of a deal communication is. So moving forward, we're really going to try and, work on building communication and, especially how you effectively communicate as well as a huge, huge thing. Now, another thing that didn't really go right, which is also due to poor communication, was that the original concept for the game is far different than the final design that you see as you play it. What I originally wanted to do was have like a multiplayer game like Mario Party and kind of add like this scary, eerie feeling to the game so that the player is having fun, but also kind of tense at the same time, which I think would be an amazing feeling for the player. It just didn't really come to fruition in this game, unfortunately. Now, what I learned, like I mentioned earlier, is that communication really is key, not just in game development, but in all projects, because without it, designs just seem to really fall through and you don't end up with the project that you originally intended on having in the beginning. Which leads me to the next thing that I learned is that it is imperative to maintain a vision for your design throughout the entire process. I mean, definitely don't like keep it the way it is. There's going to be change. You can't really avoid that, but just make sure that the game that you're making at the beginning is the game that you have at the end, which moving forward, I'm really going to keep focused on that. Another thing that I learned is that I need to kind of put myself in the shoes of a first-time player, because once the game was finished and we had playtesters play the end result, they were kind of lost and confused, and they weren't really guided properly like I wanted them to be. And that's because I was playing this game all the time, developing it, so I just kind of like lost focus on what it's like to be playing the game for the first time, unfortunately, which is a common thing that developers have. I also learned that, animation is a personal weakness of mine and that I look to improve it. So if you see any of the other games that I'm programming, designing, or maybe animating, you might see an improvement. Other than that, that is for me. Thank you so much for, watching this video, and thank you so much for playing our game.
Hi, my name is Alex Ricketts. I'm the texture artist, and here's my work. So the first thing is what went right. Our modular textures worked really well in our playtests, and players seemed to enjoy them in spite of some of the tiling that we had throughout our levels. We were able to get 2 whole levels done with unique textures on all the same models, which I was very proud of. The power-ups and the prop textures were wonderful because they were higher model, and I could add dirt and other fun details onto them that added life to them with the cartoon effects. I was also able to adapt feedback from the designer and the playtest results really well, and we were able to keep everything on track, I think, throughout the process. What went wrong? So it was difficult to generate effective textures with such low poly models, because a lot of our walls were simply 3 or 4 polygons, and it just led to a little bit of difficulty creating texture, and I had to really play around with the normal maps to make things pop. There was also a little bit of lack of communication on my part to our modeler, and that's completely on me, but if I had gotten better at that, I would have been able to get better color IDs. Some of our assets also were unused throughout our project, so the Hex Maze project was completely lost and was just unfortunately unused. What did I learn? I definitely need to communicate the importance of vertex color-based ID maps, because they help both the modeler and the texture artist design the item, I think, and they also help the texture artist apply different textures more seamlessly without as much blending between different texture maps. I also need to discuss high poly models far earlier in development so I can get some better generator effects on the different models. And I also need to double check my Unity version when I start the project, because this time I accidentally started an HDRP instead of URP. And that was my work. Thank you.
Alright, so what would we do differently? We should definitely have better communication between teammates so everybody knows what they're doing and everybody understands like what they are doing. And then also we need to utilize a design document and an asset list so we can review what's the mechanics of the game and what's needed in the games. And then we also need to have at least all team members move one card into complete in the first 5 days of the sprint, so it doesn't look like we're not doing anything in that time period. And it doesn't really matter what kind of card it is, as long as there's just one card in there, and that's good enough. Alright, so what would we do again? I think that the goal of putting a playable build at the end of the sprint was a good idea, so I think that's a great thing to try and do again. And also, the user stories being broken down into 1 points is also a really good thing. Definitely going to try that in future projects because we have a high velocity and it makes it look like we're actually doing stuff, so that's great.